Wednesday, November the 14th, 2012. Welcome to Conversations, the official MTA podcast. My name is Alex Spiroglou, and today I'm joined by Ken Tower. Ken is President and CEO and Chief Investment Strategist of Quantitative Analysis Service, and he will be presenting to the monthly meeting of the UK chapter. The topic of his presentation is modern applications of point and figure. Both the presentation and the interview itself have been videoed and are available to watch at the MTA website, along with the archives of all the UK chapter monthly meeting technical presentation and presenter interview videos. Without further delay, let's talk to Ken. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, let's begin with our usual first question, which is, would it be possible to give us some information about your personal and educational background before getting involved with technical analysis?
Right. I had very little training with stock market or anything else, but my godfather did give me 10 shares of some oil and gas stock when I was 12 or 13 years old, and I just started at that time to track the prices a little bit, but nothing formalized. Otherwise, I had a standard education and went right through college. So,
all right. And how did you get first involved with technical analysis?
Right. So junior year, finance major, Lehigh University, and we have the portfolio management and security analysis class. I didn't like this class at all. The professor was fine, but I didn't like the class. We get to one chapter in the book about technical analysis. And the professor goes out of his way to say, look, we have to cover this chapter, but you don't really have to pay any attention to it. Well, I started to look at the graphs. I've always been a little numbers oriented anyway. And right away, I thought I found something that I can, make some sense out of. And from there, I got involved with the Lehigh Investment Fund at the time. It was the very early days of cable TV. I went down to the party room where we had the TV. I would get down there right after lunch. Some of the guys coming down to watch the Three Stooges were not happy with me, but they had a ticker tape. They had a very rudimentary business channel with just some numbers that would scroll across the screen, and they had the ticker tape running across the bottom. And I just started to follow the markets from there. One other guy in the fraternity was interested. We just sort of took off from there. So by the time I graduated, that was junior year, by the time I graduated, I was into the daily graphs from O'Neill, and I had at least a rudimentary knowledge.
All right, okay, thank you very much. Could you please describe us your day-to-day responsibilities and which is the most challenging aspect of your job?
Right, well, the most challenging aspect is, boy, I don't know, I have a lot of challenging aspects at the moment. But I think the most challenging aspect is still finding a way to help your clients make money. When you're on the research side, it's one thing to have great research. If the client can't understand it or figure out how to work it into their process so that it helps them make money, you're not going to have many clients. So this is something that we really don't teach as part of the technical analysis training. But if you're an analyst or you're going to sell research, your main goal is figuring out how it's going to help your client, not just talking to the clients and getting the clients on the phone. It's keeping the clients. It's helping them to make money.
I see. Would you be possible to elaborate on, say, for example, a few products of the produce?
Where I am now at Quantitative Analysis Service, we have our own algorithm. So it's a very closed system. It's a balance of momentum indicators and oscillators that we calculate ourselves. So there isn't anything, I'm involved with the CMT program for the MTA, and it's nothing exactly that we teach. We don't use any of the indicators that we teach. It's sort of its own system. So But I will say that the reason that the firm's been in business for 30 years is, and this algorithm is actually quite a bit older than that, is that the balance between the momentum side and the oscillator side is quite good. So as you know, if you follow mostly the momentum indicators, you get in too late, you get out too late. If you follow the oscillators, you get in too early, out too early. So this is just a very nice balance between the two.
See. Which markets do you usually follow?
We follow whatever our clients ask us to follow. So right now we follow equity markets around the globe, various sectors, whether they're in the US, Europe, or Japan. We follow about 8,000 equities worldwide, again, pretty much individual equities. We also follow the commodities, the fixed income market, and currency markets, including cross rates. So we follow most everything. And again, because we're quantitative or technically oriented, we can do that. If you were fundamentally oriented, you could never have that kind of range of ideas and opinions.
I see. All right, the next section of the interview, it's called Toolbox. Could you please talk about your favorite tools and techniques? What do you specialize in?
Well, again, for the last 5 years I've been at QAS, and we specialize in entirely our own system. So, because that's what clients are paying us for. Before that, I grew up in the world of point and figure. I got a job right out of college as an institutional salesman at a small investment boutique where they specialized in point and figure charts. So I really enjoy point and figure charts. I enjoy the clarity that they bring, the sort of, well, clarity is the right word. It's just nice and clear. We did one box charts almost exclusively, the old traditional method, and I really found them to be very helpful. Now, more recently, the software has finally evolved to catch up with the point and figure, the different construction techniques of point and figure, and now you can start to apply a whole host of indicators to your point and figure charts, which would make them even better. So that would still be my favorite tool. I love candlesticks and moving averages and a whole variety of oscillators. But if I'm on a deserted island somewhere and I can only get this tiny little, 12 or what, the old ones were 300 baud dial-up modem on my deserted island, then I'm going to go with the point and figure charts.
I see. Which people have been your greatest influences? And if you had to pick 3 technical analysis books, which ones would you recommend?
Right, and that's hard to do. Certainly, I learned the business from Anthony Tabell, who was my boss at Delafield Harvey Tabell, and Tony Tabell was the second MTA president. So we had a long history, and my boss in between Tony, who was the big boss, was Bob Simpkins. He was also MTA president. So I had this introduction to the MTA at my firm. So certainly, as far as the people I've worked for, I worked there a long time, Tony Tabell was a very big influence, very bright guy, really knew the markets. He had learned from his father. Edmund Tabell was a very good technician, and Tony Tabell's uncle was Richard Wyckoff, way back in the day. So I had a very long schooling on technical analysis, but other guys I've read, John Murphy's Intermarket book I thought was great. More recently, as much as I know about point and figure charts, I learned more from Jeremy Duplessis' recent point and figure book. So what else? Starting out, the William O'Neill Daily Graphs was a great, maybe doesn't qualify as a book. The other ones I like are some, there were some books written by a guy who wrote under the name of Adam Smith that were really easy reads. They were very well written, very humorous stories, but they had a lot of information. So Adam Smith was his pseudonym, and for example, I think one was called Where Are the Customers' Yachts? Where Are the Customers' Yachts? But they were great books to read, good introduction, and as I say, easy reads.
All right, okay. Which brings us to the next section. Out of the books that you've read and all the work that you've done over the years, if you could distill your market knowledge and experience in a few axioms, in a few, say, technical analysis principles, which would this be? For example, don't fight the tape, or just which principles would you give?
Right. Well, really, what I think is that there's a life cycle, a learning life cycle for a technician, or perhaps for many different professions. You start out early in your education and you learn the basics, and then over time you add more and more and more knowledge. But I'll tell you what, after you learn all that stuff, you start to cut back on things, and you get to the point where there's really information overload, and you start to throw things out. It's almost as if you're a long distance hiker and you're starting on the Appalachian Trail and you have a 30-pound pack, and after about 2 weeks you're down to 8 pounds because you've thrown an awful lot of stuff that you found that you really didn't need. So the main principles: control your risk, don't fight the tape, don't fight the Fed is still applicable, but times are different now. But still, don't fight quantitative easing is still a valid. A lot of the things we used to look at, hikes in the discount rate or the Fed funds rate, aren't applicable, but the quantitative easing is the same idea. So you still don't want to fight the Fed, but controlling your risk is the biggest one to keep in mind.
Okay, fun fact. What does Ken do outside of market hours? Do you have any hobbies?
I've given up most of my hobbies. I like to get together with my friends and have a few pints and just talk about what's going on. I used to enjoy sailing, but I really don't have that much time for that anymore, and or playing cards, which is of course completely antiquated now, but those were fun things to do.
I see, brilliant. Okay, and I guess that wraps up today's MTA podcast. My guest today was Ken Tower. For the MTA, I'm Alex Spiroglou, and I'll see you next time. Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex.